Hey everyone, wanted to get my recap to you for Grand Lake, which was the fourth stop of the FLW Tour. Grand was nothing like I remember from the past. Obviously, it's still an amazing lake, still loaded with big fish, but we hit it at a time during the conditions and the time of year where it was extremely tough. You hear a lot of people say, well, I fished a tough tournament. Let me give you some stats so you get a real idea when I say tough, what I'm talking about. There's 165 pros on the FLW Tour. On day one, there was only 37 limits caught. On day two, there was less. There was 31. There was quite a few anglers that did not bring a fish to the scales. 22 on day one, 26 guys on day two. I'm talking about some tough fishing. And then here's the real kicker. Of the guys that caught a limit both days 1 and 2, there was only 13 pros that were able to accomplish that. So it was a tough event. Probably not the toughest tour level event I've fished over the years, but a close second. That being said, I wanted to give you just a quick recap. Day 1, I caught 3 bass that weighed 6 pounds, 13 ounces, had me like in 79th. It was just 2 pounds out of, I believe, the top 50. Day 2, I only caught 1 fish, but it was a good one. It was a 4-3. Total, 11 pounds. And that put me in 101st overall after 2 days. Not a good event. Tough event. I caught some short fish, but outside of those short fish, I never lost any keeper bass. So there's nothing that I did wrong mechanically speaking. But this game is all about decisions. And so I want to go through some of those decisions and some of the things that I came up against and how I processed that, and be honest with you, be transparent here. I'm going to talk about some of the mistakes that I made. So number 1, the spinnerbait bite was my strongest thing coming out of practice. What I mean by that is the last day of practice had more bites on a spinnerbait by keeper bass than pitching a tube, which is how I caught other fish. But better than that, better than anything else. So the spinnerbait was definitely on my mind. Then historically, events that have been there this time of year, the spinnerbait's played well. So it's a safe bet. It's a bait that's going to get you better quality, but the fish are pretty susceptible on Grand Lake this time of year. So the first day, of the 3 fish that I caught, I only caught 1 on a spinnerbait. The other ones I caught pitching a black neon tube to isolated cover. This is where it gets tricky. The water level dropped from the first day of practice all the way through the second day of the tournament, a level of over 1 foot vertically. So you got to think about that. It's that cover is getting shallower in the water. So that makes me think my pitching bite, pitching this tube around cover, is probably going away. And then based on the fact that I got more bites throwing the spinnerbait, that kind of amplifies that train of thought. So I was more eager to push that spinnerbait, and I did that a lot. And in the midst of it, I only caught 1 fish on the spinnerbait on day 1, and 2 of them were on the tube. Day 2, I know from talking to some trusted sources that guys that really kept the spinnerbait in their hand were more apt to they did better than I did. So I thought maybe the tube was not quite where I wanted to be. I need to really stress that spinnerbait. So that's what I did. I pushed that to the forefront, made that my hammer, so to speak, and just went to work. We had bad storms come through, lightning, rain, and at about 11 o'clock, I caught 1 fish on a crappie on a spinnerbait. But I pulled into this little area and I picked up the tube again and caught a 4-pounder. At this point, this is where you typically would say, okay, I really need to look at this tube thing. And so I really pushed that. I stressed that. I moved that to the forefront instead of the spinnerbait. I ran around, still throwing the spinnerbait, but looking for areas, targets, isolated cover, which I could pitch that tube to. I didn't get any more bites. But in hindsight, it's always 20/20 every time we fish a tournament. But in hindsight, the thing that I should have really thought about is kind of take myself out of that mental box where the tube had to be pitched to isolated targets, to actually just fishing it, just like short casting it. Instead of just pitching it to isolated targets, I could have short cast or long pitches and just worked it back like a creature bait, like a worm, like a jig, and I probably could have caught more fish. I really believe that. Now, the tournament was won by Jeremy Lawyer, and he did a great job, and most of the guys, including Jeremy, threw a spinnerbait almost throughout the tournament. So you kind of think about that for a second, but also wherever you are on any tournament body of water throughout the country, there's always different patterns going on. And the area where I was, clearly I flogged that water with the spinnerbait. I mean, I really put it through the paces, and it was not producing for me. Maybe I had the wrong spinnerbait on, but maybe I needed to try a different weight or blade combination, maybe different color. But the bottom line is, the thing that was working for me was that tube. And I needed to just take the idea that they wanted the tube. Instead of this horizontally moving spinnerbait, they wanted something vertically falling and down on the bottom in my area of the lake. Looking back in hindsight, the best thing that I could have done is kind of shed that mental box and really think outside the box. Think tube down on the bottom, working it, casting it, pitching it. And that probably would have ended me up in a much better position. Overall, for 2 days, I missed getting a check by 6 pounds, which sounds like a lot, but if you just think about 2 fish each day or 1 fish each day, 3 pounds a day, it's not a lot. I didn't miss it by a lot, but in this game, sometimes you miss it by what seems like a little, and you end up missing it by a lot. At the end of it all, I'm owning my performance. Or the lack of my performance, this tough event. It was an event where you try to learn something from, and I've done that. I'm going to put it in the rearview mirror. This week I've got a guide trip on Lake Fork, and then at the end of the week, Friday, head up to Lake Cherokee in Tennessee for the 5th stop of the FLW Tour event. No rest for the weary. That's kind of how things are going on. It's spring, and in tournament bass fishing, that means a lot of tournaments, and I'm excited about that because I want a chance to get a little redemption. Well, that's kind of my wrap up for Grand Lake. If you like this, guys, man, I appreciate a like or a comment. I'll try to get back to all those. But also, man, if you like what you heard here, like my channel, subscribe to it, whatever in that. I'm taking suggestions on what you might like to see in the future. Let me know if you have any questions or would like me to demonstrate anything. I appreciate you guys watching this, and good fishing. Have fun this spring. Thanks.